one of the things that happened this week falls into that need to know category. It was the sentencing of the driver who back in March crashed into a mother and her 3 children. This is Miriam Urimi that you're looking at. She was sentenced on Wednesday for the death of that mother and her 2 children, which were the ages of 8 and 3. Her son was also critically injured in that crash. He is still alive, although his medical condition, his life will not be the same again, is how it was described to us. Now, interestingly enough, Ms. Urimi had faced a sentence of a sentence of 5 to 15 years. She pled guilty last month, and within legal circles, when we talked to legal experts about this case, they said the judge could have knocked her sentence down a notch, but went down a few. So they said instead of going, our sources tell us, instead of going from 5 to 15 years, because she pleaded guilty, although it's not a requirement, but the judge felt compelled to reward her for pleading guilty, and could have gone to 4 to 12 years, as a legal expert told us. But the judge knocked it down even further to 3 to 9 years. And the question of serving as little as 3 years for this type of crash, where 3 lives were taken, was justice served? That was the key question that was asked this week. And in the context of that, street safety experts in the city have been trying to pass a super speeder law. Now, there was one in place, but under Mayor Adams' administration, the city's Department of Transportation and its Commissioner Yadanis Rodriguez let the super speeder law that existed pass. And what it basically says is if you have been ticketed this many times in the period of the last 12 months, you have to take an education course. When the city and the Transportation Department, under the current commissioner, let that super speeder law lapse, they did not create a new one in its place. So since then, there has been no repercussion for it. And important to point out here that Ms. Urimi, when she was driving in March and killed that mother and her 2 daughters, there were over 90 tickets on her car. At least 20 of them were for speeding. The vast majority of those were for speeding in school zones. On that day that she killed the mother and her 2 kids, she was also driving with a suspended license. Now, Fox 5 obtained a letter that was issued by the district attorney of Brooklyn, Eric Gonzalez, and found that the DA in Brooklyn objected to this plea deal that the judge was allowing. And in his letter to the judge, he details all the evidence that was in the case. And sources tell us that the DA in Brooklyn wanted to take this driver to trial. They had documented her being on her phone with the video function engaged for what was described as a significant amount of time before she crashed into that family. And they have it from multiple angles, looking through her sunroof, looking through the passenger side. So there's a significant amount of evidence. Now, worth pointing out that Ms. Urimi, you see, was in tears there. She gave a short statement that she read out of a note that her lawyer was actually holding. And the judge declined to let the family, the Sayada family, the victims, he declined to let the representative for the family speak in court. So bad taste there in people's mouths. And this week, actually yesterday, I spoke with Assemblyman Michael Novakhov. Now, the current super speeder law would put a limiter on the vehicles of drivers who have an extremely bad record of late in terms of running red lights, speeding, and such. Now, it passed the state Senate earlier this year, but it got held up in the Assembly. Advocates for street safety want Albany to take it up again when they meet again, which will be at the beginning of the new year. We were able to talk to assemblymen from the district where this crash took place on Ocean Parkway. It is also the victims, the Sayada family, live in his district, so he represents them. But earlier this year, he was against the super speeder bill. But given this case and some changes, the assemblyman changed his position on it, which for which we wanted to have a conversation with him because it may be an indication of support changing in the assembly and letting this super speeder bill become law. So we're going to play this interview that we had with Assembly member Michael Novakhov. Let's roll that here. Thank you so much for being with us. My first question is your reaction to the verdict this past week, where Miriam Yerimi was sentenced to as little as 3 years for killing the mother and two daughters, as well as really significantly injuring her son. What's your reaction to the sentence?
I was shocked. I was shocked and outraged, as well as my community. This
Who
is
do
not
you
fair.
Right? What about it is unfair? If you could detail it for me.
Well, we believe it's too soft. It's too light because uh, it wasn't just an accident. It was an offender behind the wheel, Miriam Yerimi, excuse me, who had 93 violations, and I believe 20 of them were speeding violations. She was speeding almost 90 miles an hour in the 25-mile zone, an Ocean Parkway between T and U. And I understand there's a plea deal, but it's absolutely obvious that it is her fault. She's guilty no matter what, if she pleads guilty or she does not. And it's a very sad example for those spitsters who think they will get away with a very soft sentencing.
Right. And as we've been communicating too, by pleading guilty, it cut out the Brooklyn District Attorney from the equation. In fact, our understanding is DA Gonzalez objected to this plea deal, but because of the plea deal, it goes straight to sentencing. Is there an inference then that the laws that were there, the maximum would have been 5 to 15? Is there an inference then that the law is too weak on this?
Well, I think that we have a Democratic judge who is um, very soft on this, very soft on this uh, um, uh, on what happened, and I strongly believe that it should be a maximum 5 to 15 rather than three to nine. It's a huge tragedy. I mean, let's think of the family, of the father, Saada family, father who lost his wife and two children, and another child was hurt badly. I think this woman should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. I'm absolutely positive about that. And again, it wasn't an accident with someone who is a good driver, and that we could have talked about, the softer approach to this. 93 violations, suspended driver's license. And Arthur, I have to admit that if we would have more checkpoints like we used to have, right? And she would be stopped by a police officer, she wouldn't be behind the wheel.
Right. Um, do you think Albany should consider taking up sentencing guidelines for this type of case? Do you think 5 to 15 is too light? Would you advocate a more profound sentence?
Under these circumstances, under these conditions, yes.
Okay, and the other question that I had for you, there's a super speeder law that has been proposed by street safety advocates. They brought it to Albany this past year. It passed the state Senate, if I have it right. It ran into resistance at Assembly. You were one of the objectors to it, as I understand it, but I also understand that your position has evolved on this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, definitely. So, when it was the first time I read the bill, it said that only 6 violations can can lead to uh, the consequences of that legislation. And we're all New Yorkers. We all drive. We all understand that sometimes you need to, pass by a car, and if it's a few miles over, that's it. You got a ticket. So 6 tickets per year, roughly once per 2 months. I thought that would be just a little less than needed to support this legislation. So now it is 16. I would like to thank the sponsors of the bill for listening to me, I guess, my voice and some other voices, to bump it up to 16 violations per year. And now I am inclining to, I would love to dive into the bill more, to research the bill, to I'll ask my legislative team to read the bill more carefully, and if we think it's worth supporting, yes, we will support this. I will support this bill. It looks much more common sense to me right now.
What would you say to your fellow assembly members who maybe also earlier this year were against it? What would you say to them in terms of what you would want them to consider now with it having changed for you?
Well, New York State is very different. There are big cities like New York City, there are rural areas. So every assembly member is representing their districts. So I believe they need to, kind of see if this bill works for their area, right? But considering such, tragic accidents in my district, and New York City it's a crazy city, it's a crazy place. And we see what's going on the roads. So probably for New York City, we'll have more support for this legislation.
Okay, and my last question is the Saada family. Were you the victims of it and only survived, my understanding, by the husband and the 4-year-old son who
Yes.
is pretty much never going to be the same either. Um, have you been able to has your office communicated with them at all? And what would your message, whether or not you've communicated with them, what would your message be to them?
Yeah, it was very tough to make that call to the father. I spoke with him. I even offered to rename the part of Ocean Parkway in memory of Sada family. Um, but the father said that it won't be necessary. They thought they didn't want to do it. Maybe for now, maybe later. But uh, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine having such loss. It just turns your life upside down. It's just, your life turns before and after. Uh, Unbelievable tragedy.
And one can only imagine what it's like for them to stay in that neighborhood, right? Every time you
Yes.
cross that street, it
Yes, sir.
must be just so jarring. All right, Assemblyman Novakhov, thank you so much for your time and this conversation. We really appreciate it.